In spite of these efforts, street violence continues to affect San Franciscans. And it's not just important for us to be part of the California City's Gang Prevention Network. We also want to learn from the best practices that you have to offer here. So we're going to be very active in this, especially at this time when we're experiencing our realignment. And I know Chief Stills is here to share with you what we're doing already. And we're not going to lie back. We're not going to be victims of our own decisions. We have to do better, and we have to encourage everyone to do better with less. And so we're already launching our city's realignment plan, and through her leadership, adult probation is already collaborating with the multiple city agencies. We're already creating new community assessment service centers as a result of welcoming in our additional prisoners. We're increasing our health and service agencies, and we're also providing analytical support to manage and monitor that program. We're not going to be victims of realignment. We're going to be ahead of that. We have to be ahead of that. And I look forward to the recommendations that all of you will share with us. And you will definitely have a mayor here. We'll join the other mayors in making sure we do our best. Thank you very much.
Just very quickly to reflect on what each of the mayors has said. After the whereases in the call to action, the points are for the state and federal government to encourage and support a policy preference for comprehensive action planning to prevent and reduce gang violence in order to create community well-being. Second, for the state and counties to involve city governments as full partners in current realignment efforts, particularly with regard to such county functions as probation, parole, public health, and child welfare, that all have a demonstrable effect on public policy. Third out of four, for the state and other stakeholders to join the network in creating an evaluation methodology which will inform local, state, and nationwide comprehensive practice. And finally, and this is something I've been working on a great deal, as all of you have, as you all are bringing in many funding sources and streams in your comprehensive effort, you are hampered by federal policy which is siloed. So the last recommendation for the state and federal governments to continue to step up efforts to distribute funding that is flexible, adequate, and coordinated so as to support comprehensive, balanced violence reduction approaches, including multi-agency and long-term funding. That's the core of the call. We have a few minutes before Kamala arrives, and we're fortunate to have two other mayors. I indicated I'm victimizing them tonight, so you got two pop-up mayors here to endorse this. Tom, why don't you from Oxnard, and then Ernesto Olivares from Santa Rosa.
Good morning. Being one of the pop-up mayors, I would like to thank Mayor Kwan for her gracious hospitality. We did our job last night and spent some money in the local restaurants, and we've already started. This is a little bit like a family reunion for me after the number of years we've been together. And Jack, I just want to take a step back. When I first got elected to mayor 7 years ago, as a father of 3 young boys, gang violence was something that I just had no understanding. But unfortunately, anytime we had a dialogue about reducing or eliminating gang violence, it was a very hopeless discussion. I mean, it was explained away, and all the explanations are why we could not reduce gang violence and why we could not get rid of it. It was cultural, it was ingrained. And I say, Jack, that the call to action started here 4 years ago. Because we had leaders that got together and said, you know what, regardless of the history and regardless of the past, we're going to take a stand that we're going to eliminate gang violence. That it's going to be something that we see in our lifetime. And the senseless killings and the maimings and the violence would stop. The strategies and policy that we developed together in this room and other rooms has made a difference in all of our communities. And I say it has made a significant difference in this community of Oxnard. We have seen a steady decline in the homicide rate over the last 5 years. And I hate to even mention this, but this year we're into October, and we have not had a single gang-related homicide. And we're not a large city, but it wasn't that long ago our homicides numbered in the 20s, and half of those were guaranteed to be gang-related. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to, and I'd like to introduce Supervisor Long, our county supervisor from Ventura. We're one of those areas that enjoys a great relationship between city and county. I think that is imperative if you're going to be successful. So I'm here to say we thoroughly support the call. I say the call occurred a number of years ago, and we are now seeing the benefits of that, but we cannot do it alone. We have to continue to, and we should receive preference and financing and grants and support as a result of our work. And we can make a difference, and we are making a difference, and I look forward to the weekend. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I have to compliment you too, Tom, because you were one of the early ones who stood up in Oakland 4.5 years ago and said, look at the muscle in this room. We have got to focus on policy too. In the last 2 years, we really have, both state and federal. So again, thank you. Ernesto, Santa Rosa.
Thank you, Jack. Let me tell you, as a former law enforcement professional, 30 years with the San Jose Police Department, I know that enforcement alone does not work in reducing gang violence in any community. I know that for a fact. I tried. And I'll tell you, this is truly a reunion. For me, in the past, going to a conference to discuss gang issues, it would be filled with what? Law enforcement, looking at new strategies and how to do more enforcement of gangs. Times have changed. The call to action has already started. We know that enforcement only does not work, and it won't forever. Policy changes start at the local level. That's what we've done in Santa Rosa. Those policy decisions include developing a mayor's gang prevention task force that includes major stakeholders in our city and within our county. It also included passing a 1/4% sales tax to enhance public safety services and to provide funding for much needed gang prevention services in Santa Rosa as well. The battles that we've had out in the streets of Santa Rosa were not working for us. And I'll tell you this, any community that is in conflict with its youth is no community at all. So I think this is a wonderful place to be right now for all of us together to do what we can, do what you can at the local level, but we need our partners at the state and the federal level to make things happen for us. Thank you.
There may be a couple of minutes for press questions, but first I want these good folks to sign. Mayor Kwan, Santa Rosa. And Patrick from San Bernardino.
It's a blue pen to make it distinctive.
Thank you. Thank you all. Let's have a hand for these folks. Ernesto Olivares from Santa Rosa. And this is Dennis Donahue from
Salinas. And I'd like to answer the question by talking about one of the partners that we're most pleased and proud to have associated with in Salinas in our effort, and that's the Naval Postgraduate School. And this Sunday, we're going to launch our program that we've worked collaboratively throughout the entire community. And the point about these networks is it takes a while to get there. I note when we all first started coming together, Mayor Morris and San Bernardino talked about what they intended to do, and now you hear quite naturally it's what they do. And that's important. You heard the mayor of Santa Rosa say, I tried law enforcement. That doesn't cut it. So these networks are critical because we are charged with creating new and enduring structures. And one of the things I routinely talk about in Salinas is not that we don't know what to do, is can we scale it up and can we sustain it? But the very quick lesson I want to share from my time with the Naval Postgraduate School is the way they framed the issue. Now, when they first got involved with us, everyone thought we were going to be running a black ops operation and the Navy SEALs would be on the ground, and nothing could have been further from the truth. On the other hand, I'm absolutely delighted that the best and the brightest happen to live a few miles away. We're in our community. We wanted to share their expertise. And when they looked at this issue through kind of a counterinsurgency lens, they, I think, have helped Selena's frame what's the way forward. A weak win is when you begin to suppress the violence, and then a strong win is when you begin to control the political landscape, and then a complete win is when you actually engage in social and economic transformation. Now, I think we can all take a look at that overseas, and you know, if I were a betting man, I'd kind of put a little more money on Iraq than Afghanistan, and I don't intend to get into that. But what I will say, as a California mayor, when I first encountered strong win, I thought, well, that's kind of for overseas. But Tom, you're lucky. Every city and county doesn't work well together. Every community-based organization, faith-based business, they don't always work well together. So to punch through that and really create those networks is critical. And the other thing is when people actually want the same thing and operate out of goodwill, we also have to kind of punch through habitual turf. So when you issue this call to action that says, look, the point of the realm on a go-forward basis is cities that are really together, truly, recognizing it's dynamic, you can move ahead and fall back, but that's no small thing to build a network and to get to the next level of a strong win, that we have a chance as a community to move forward towards the ultimate objective of a complete win, which, as the mayor said, all of us standing here really believe it's possible despite the odds. Could you, and I'll just close with this, could you imagine if a mayor or a senator or a governor stood up and said, we can't do this? I don't believe that for a moment. We can do this. And so I'm always, so this network issue is the heart of the matter, because you can't get to complete win unless you pass through that prism of networks and a strong win.
Thank you, guys. It just reminds me, and you, thank you all for your observation, it just reminds me of something I've shared with you before. In San Jose, I was talking to a community activist from Pico, Cora Tomalinas, and I said, Cora, you're getting a new mayor. What's going to happen to the task force? She looked at me and said, Jack, you don't understand. It's not the mayor's, it's ours. So, and your comments, Tom, about driving this into the community, all of you, it is structure, and it's really important, and it's got to be accountable with plans. Schools, you said you do this, have you done it? Faith community said, have you done it? But under it all, is this really driven into the civic fabric as a way to do business? And I know the leadership that all of you mayors are providing to your communities, because you can't just sign it and get it done. You are out there on the hustings all the time. And I've repeatedly said that the cities are atop, city mayors are atop the potential and the pain. Unfortunately, the funding is somewhere else. So I've got to thank you for your leadership. You guys are just... I think this is a little bit, but is there any other, are there any other burning questions before the AG comes? Yes, if you could identify yourself.
More the mayors about federal funding, specifically specific example of some funding that you received that has limited you, but the expectation of limited you, how to use the money. You should probably ask us in a couple of weeks when the next COPS round comes out.
Anybody want to respond to the question?
I'm actually very serious. You probably should ask us when the next COPS round comes out in a few weeks. A lot of us have applications in. I know ours is based on truancy and schools, and
Right now, at least for Oakland, the extra help that we're getting from the ATF to get semi-automatic weapons off the streets that are leaking in from Nevada and across the border are critical. And those kinds of in-kind services, it's not necessarily funding. But for these gang task force particular projects, in Oakland, it helped us fund the street outreach workers that we send out when we have violence on the street. And we use them not just for the gangs, because the gangs tend to be concentrated in the Latino community, and a lot of our violence and shooting is in the black community, but we use them with young people who are out on the street in general. And it's been a critical part of our gang task force within the city and our coalition, and I know that the rest of our cities use them very similarly for intervention projects.
Very quickly, I lament the passing of earmarks. As a city mayor, I could sell my case for intervention and prevention to my congresspersons, and they responded. I've got 2 of my Operation Phoenix centers in the heart of the most challenged areas of our city kept alive by $500,000 earmark from Congressman Jerry Lewis for a 3-year period. When that expires, if earmarks don't come back, I end up the loser. Largely, we did the same as Mayor Ernesto. We did a quarter-cent sales tax. Got a 70% thumbs up from our city to do that for public safety purposes. Most all of it has gone actually to the police department. I was hoping to have a little more for prevention and intervention, but my council said give it to the PD. So we have supported our programs largely by applications like those earmarks and other applications, the COPS grants and other anti-gang activities. We become grant specialists to maintain the resources we have, and we've become this remarkable alliance of community nonprofits and other services that have kept us alive. The feds have a limited role at this point. The COPS grant is one opportunity. Earmarks for us has been another important opportunity, but not much else out there on this landscape.
I echo the same themes, but we've also been very fortunate, and I want to emphasize the theme I said earlier, that is, if you build strong communities, you're going to really attack that gang prevention in a very positive way. And we are recipients of a HUD grant, Community Choice Program grant for $30.5 million to rebuild our Alice Griffith, one of the hardest areas of our city and the toughest of our public housing developments. And if you look at years ago, it was very high in the statistics in 2009 of all the shootings and gang recruitment. We're going to rebuild that housing with those neighbors on site and with the residents of Alice Griffin actually participating in the building of their housing. That's how you get strong communities. That's how even our chief says, you know, if the other programs aren't working, their job's going to be 10 times harder. And so building strong communities, in my opinion, is going to contribute a long way to gang prevention, and we're going to continue doing that. And we're very fortunate with Lita Pelosi and Senator Feinstein's help and others that we're able to get that large grant to rebuild our public housing in the right way. I think one of the reasons they chose us was because of the integration that we have, working directly with the residents who've been victimized for many years. They get to build their housing with us as a partnership.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one final comment. The AG is on her way up. It's this. One of the things we're trying to do on the federal level is to have the various federal agencies pool funds so you can get funds from HUD at the same time. There might be a justice dimension, an education dimension, and an HHS dimension. Common RFPs, common outcomes, so you're not fighting for individual grants all the time. So, again, thank you, mayors. Thank all of you. You can stretch. She'll be up here in a couple of minutes. It is my good fortune to introduce the AG of your state, who will welcome us this morning. Her credentials dazzle, but most impressive is her lifelong commitment to public safety, to stopping those whose crimes tear communities apart, and with equal fervor offering to help those on the margins of our society, those who risk falling back into lives of crime. Before, she headed the city attorney's division on family and children. She's doubled the conviction rate for gun felonies, aggressively convicted violent offenders, gang members, and domestic violence offenders. Often honored, she was recognized as Woman of Power by the Urban League, Thurgood Marshall Award from the National Black Prosecutors Association, featured on Oprah Winfrey, and in Newsweek as one of America's 20 most powerful women. She is also an author. Smart on Crime, a career prosecutor's plan to make us safer. I met your Attorney General only 2 minutes ago. Thus, I don't know her that well. But I do know this, Kamala. One can tell a lot about a person by the staff who work for them. My experience with your staff has been terrific. They are deeply committed, as you, efficient, a delight to work with, and they have a delicious sense of humor. They, like you, I believe, don't see this work as a job, but a calling. I'm the lucky guy who gets to introduce your Attorney General. Welcome, Kamala Harris.
Thank you, Jack, and for your long-standing leadership on these issues and everything that we talk about when we talk about being smart on crime. And you are absolutely right. I have an outstanding staff, and they've been with me for a long time. They're with me in the DA's office, and that's Susie Loftus, who's the Special Assistant Attorney General in charge of what we do around criminal justice policy and law enforcement, and then the most fabulous Director of the California Department of Justice, Larry Wallace. So I want to recognize them and thank them, and thank everyone here. I see a lot of friends in the room. I saw Chief Batts here, a great leader of law enforcement, and his partner in all that needs to happen around law enforcement in the Bay Area, the great Chief of the San Francisco Police Department, Greg Sir. I want to give them a shout out and thank them for all their leadership. And it is wonderful to join you here in the place of my birth, Oakland, California. You know, as many of you know, I see Karen, I see a bunch of people I've known for years. I started out my career in the Alameda County DA's office, and I am a career prosecutor. And I've personally prosecuted every kind of crime you can imagine, standing in front of juries and talking with them about why justice demands and dictates that there will be severe and serious consequence when one human being kills another human being, or when a woman is raped or a child is molested. I have done that work for over 20 years and strongly believe in the importance of making sure that we keep communities safe. But when we talk about criminal justice policy, it is about discussing the issue beyond a specific criminal case. It is about talking about the crime problem. And in that way, and from that perspective then, when we talk as leaders of our communities, all united in our desire to have safe communities, we must be committed to focusing not only on the consequences that must take place after a crime is committed, but on what we can also do to prevent a crime from happening in the first place. And that's what we talk about when we talk about being smart on crime. I think about it in a way that says, for too long we've accepted this false choice on criminal justice policy that says, well, you're either soft on crime or you're tough on crime, instead of asking, are we smart on crime? So in particular, and Mayor Kwan, I see you here, thank you for your leadership. I want to talk a little bit about the issue from the perspective that I now see it as the Attorney General of California. We are the most populous state. We are the largest state in the Union. And what we know is that on an annual basis, California releases about 120,000 prisoners. And within 3 years of their release, 70% reoffend. There's a word for that, it's called recidivism. And we have the highest recidivism rate in the country, although not by far. So when we talk on what we need to do, and we talk about and think about what we need to do to create safe communities, one of the biggest issues that we as a state are facing is the issue of known offenders who 7 out of 10 will reoffend. And I would suggest, as a career prosecutor and now as your Attorney General, that we need to shut that revolving door. And the way we are going to be most successful in doing that is recognizing that we have predictable outcomes that we have the ability to change if we focus on the issue of re-entering former offenders and doing everything we can to reduce the likelihood that they will re-offend. I think about this issue in the context of now what we are dealing with, in particular around our state budget. You know, some would say we're a state on the verge of bankruptcy. And what we know is that the slice of that pie that is the criminal justice system, the slice of that budget that is the criminal justice system in California, is a very huge slice. It is extremely expensive. And in the interest then of our state budget being of equal interest for some of us as public safety, we need to get smarter. And part of the way we are going to do that, I believe, is to infuse metrics in our analysis of our effectiveness. Looking at our systems beyond some good sense of satisfaction because we are doing things the way they've always been done, and instead infuse metrics into the analysis and do as the private sector tells us is good business and look at the return on our investment. So in that way, I believe that what you are doing, Jack, here with all of these leaders, mayors, police chiefs, community folks, and others, is doing the work of coming together as a community with a collective purpose and desire to be smarter in the way we are using diminishing public resources and to do what we can to be more effective around the creation of public safety. And when I think about specific examples, I'm just going to talk about a couple based on my own experience. And I know Mayor Ed Lee was here, the great mayor of the city and county of San Francisco. And we were talking about a couple of initiatives that we created in San Francisco. One is an initiative called Back on Track, which we created when I was DA of San Francisco. And we chose to focus on the 18 through 24-year-old, first-time, low-level, nonviolent drug sales offender. Why that population? Well, when I was at Howard University in college, we were all 18 through 24. And we were called college kids. But when you turn 18 and you're in the system, you're considered an adult, period. Without any regard to the fact that that is the very phase of life in which we have invested billions of dollars in this world in those places called colleges and universities. Knowing that is a prime phase of life during which we mold and shape and direct a human being to become a productive adult. So we chose to focus on that age population, and essentially it was a public-private partnership. And by the way, again, with diminishing resources, I suggest to you that public-private partnerships are essential to seeing our way through an improved and more efficient criminal justice system. It is going to be about calling on the leaders of business who consider themselves to not only be leaders in business, but leaders in the community. And what we did is we brought together job skills development, parenting classes, and a number of other resources around the population. And over the course of 5 years, we reduced the recidivism for that population from 54% to less than 10%. The United States Department of Justice, in fact, designated it as a model of innovation for law enforcement in the United States, and it has been replicated in different jurisdictions around the country. And as an aside, I will suggest to all of you, and I think we all know this, innovation in law enforcement is not an oxymoron. We can do it. There's another initiative that we started, again, with the same purpose and focus, and it was a bit controversial. And it was the issue of focusing on elementary school truancy. Now, why did I do that? Well, we had a rash of homicides in San Francisco a few years back. I know many of our cities are plagued with those statistics going up and down. And it was an issue for all of us in leadership. So I asked a member of my staff to go and tell me who are our homicide victims who were under the age of 25 when they were killed. And the data came back, and it included the fact that 94% were high school dropouts. So then I went over to the school district and I asked the superintendent, what's going on? And she said, well, Kamala, of the few number of children we had at the time in San Francisco public schools, 5,500 had been designated as habitually and chronically truant. And of that number, 2,400 were elementary school students. And when I started looking at it even more, we realized that we're talking about 6, 7-year-olds who are missing 50, 60, up to 80 days of a 180-day school year. Now, who do we think those children will end up being? And so, the direct connection between public education and public safety. And so we decided to take it on, and I did something that was considered at the time to be a bit controversial, Jack. Because you see, one of the benefits of being the chief elected law enforcement officer of then the city and now the state is you got a big old badge. And there is an artistic rendering of said badge on your stationery. And so I sent a letter out on my stationery as DA at the time to every parent in the San Francisco Unified School District, outlining the direct connection between elementary school truancy, high school dropout rates, who will be a victim of crime, and who will be a perpetrator. Letter went out to every parent in the school district. I, in fact, got a call from a friend, and he said, Kamala, my wife got the letter. She freaked out. She called all the kids into the living room, held up the letter, and said, if you don't go to school, Kamala's going to put you and me in jail. Intended effect. Because the point was to do exactly what we were able to accomplish. The principal then called Mrs. Smith and said, Mrs. Smith, you haven't been returning my calls, but now did you hear that crazy DA said that this is a crime and she's going to look after it. So I need you to return my call. Call went returned. Over the course of this initiative, which the current DA, George Gascon, is continuing with the partnership of Mayor Ed Lee, over the last 4 years consecutively, we have seen a substantial decrease in truancy for that population. In fact, over 30%. And some people said, well, but you're trying to criminalize parents. The last thing we want is for parents to be locked up. I agree. But you know the beauty of this initiative? We, through this initiative, had interactions with hundreds and hundreds of parents, where we did what we called the DA mediation, and we would bring, sometimes I'd have some of my prosecutors come to sit during those mediations. And in fact, when I first rolled it out, because this was not traditional for a DA's office, Alameda County DA's office under Nancy O'Malley is doing it, but it is not a traditional function. And what we did is I took volunteers, because there really wasn't the budget for it, and the first prosecutors that volunteered were my homicide and gang prosecutors. And so I'd have them go sit in the mediations, and you know, those dudes already look pretty mean, right? And so the parents would say, well, who's the mean looking dude? Well, that's someone the DA sent over. Why? Well, because they're going to start prosecuting if we can't work this out. But by asking the question of why little Johnny, who was 7, is missing that many days of school, by putting the infrared spotlight of our public safety and law enforcement on that issue, we were then able to find out exactly what was going on. We then learned, for example, of a woman who was by herself raising her 3 children, holding down 2 jobs, and homeless. True story. And so by asking the question and bringing her in, we then could access and help her access services that already exist. And that was the point of the initiative. And to this day, not one parent has been jailed. But we have prosecuted a couple of the cases, which means basically it's an infraction, but hundreds and hundreds of students have benefited. So I would suggest there are many different ways at which we can focus on this issue that you are meeting about today, which is what we can do to focus on gang crime at its worst by rolling it back and looking at predictors and how we can intervene early in the cycle. Because frankly, again, I'll end my comments where I started. I am a career prosecutor, and I do believe in consequence to crime. And that's why I went down in the first couple of months of my new position to Calexico, California, which is in Imperial County. And I looked at the tunnels down there. And I saw photographs of tunnels with walls as smooth as they are in the Marriott, lined with lighting and air conditioning. And it was clear to me that that was about a business that's making a lot of money through the trafficking of guns and drugs and human beings. I saw evidence of the seriousness of the threat to public safety when we look at the cartels and how highly organized and efficient they've been in committing crimes that are running right up the I-5. I've seen it when we were part of an operation in Los Baños that ended up in the arrest warrants for 101 Norteño gang members. So it's a serious issue. But it is, in that way, something that we need to approach understanding it is not monolithic. And in a way of understanding that we can and have a responsibility, all of us, be as community leaders and social workers or teachers or police officers or prosecutors, we all have a role to play in addressing this issue in a way that I believe and know we can make a difference. And I'll close by just saying that we are facing, obviously then, many challenges, but I think we all are here because we know in the face of challenge and crisis, there are also great opportunities. And so I want to commend and thank all of you as leaders for being here today and dedicating this day and your time and your expertise to moving us forward to find some of the solutions. Thank you very much.